the reason that I am at SCR at all is that as a young actor, and I was a professional actor at 13. So I was in San Francisco. My father was a serviceman. And that's why we were in San Francisco, because he was stationed at Hunters Point. My brother was an actor with the Actors Workshop. His name was Robert Doyle. And he was, I just adored him. I worshiped my brother. He was a fantastic actor, wonderful artist. And being a member of the Actors Workshop in San Francisco, and also kind of looking after me, because my father was in the service. My mother had to come to LA quite frequently because her father was ill. So I was under his arm, carted off from Hunters Point to downtown San Francisco to the workshop. And so at the workshop, I met all these people, and they said to my brother, well, you know, you've got Ricky with you. Why don't we put Ricky in a show? And so they had a kind of a family theater adjunct to the workshop that performed at the old Encore, which was a subterranean theater in downtown San Francisco, in a little cable car in the lobby. Those who know it probably will know that. And anyway, I was put in shows there. You know, I worked with Bob Phelan, Susan Darby, and Tom Roski, and my brother, and other actors from the workshop. So fast forward now, several years, my father got transferred to Long Beach, California, and I had to, trundle down to Lakewood, California, which is where he lived. I felt like I'd been dropped off the edge of the earth there from San Francisco to Lakewood. And so I started looking around for something to do, and there was a junior college there in Lakewood. So I trundled off to this junior college, Long Beach City College, and enrolled in a drama class. And there was a teacher there. In his first year of teaching, his name was David Emmes. And he walked into the classroom, and he looked at the roll in front of him of the list of students that enrolled in rehearsal and performance. And he called out to the class. We were seated in a theater, and I, of course, was sitting in the back, kind of acting artsy with my black turtleneck on. And he said, who's Richard Doyle? And I raised my hand, and he called me down to the front of the room. And he says, are you related to Robert Doyle of the workshop? And I said, yes, he's my brother. And he said, well, I'll shorten this, but in short, he said, well, if you're as good as he is, we're starting a theater, and we'd like you to come down, and I'd like you to come down and meet the rest of the company. And we're looking for actors. And so I did. I trundled off down to a little marine swap shop that they had acquired from David's father, or stepfather, Sam Emmes. And I was introduced to everybody, and come to find out that they had all been students, David Emmes and Martin Benson, Jack Davis, Art Kustik, Don Took. All these people had been students at San Francisco State College, and they had been theater students. And of course, they had gone into town and seen numerous plays at the Actors Workshop. My brother was in many of them, played the fool in King Lear with Michael O'Sullivan as Lear, and he played Stanley in The Birthday Party, the world premiere of The Birthday Party. And so they knew Bobby. And so they welcomed me into that company. I was 19 years old at the time. And that's how I joined SCR. And so, yes, I looked on those, David Emmes and Martin Benson, and also a gentleman who has passed on named Jack Davis. I looked on them as brothers, and even in some cases as a father figure, because they were guiding me on what to do with what gifts I had. I actually had been an entertainer since I was a little kid. And I was a character actor, and with some versatility in my abilities, I was used quite a bit in the company as a supporting player on a lot of difficult theater, but challenging in a good way. And so I was not so much interested in being in a Christmas show as I was in being in the whatever was the more difficult show being done at the theater at the time. And at that time, actually, when we started to do Christmas Carol, we had just opened the second stage. which when we first moved into the building was a storage facility. And we found that our subscribers kind of missed the old 170-seat Third Step Theater in Costa Mesa. And so David and Mark decided, well, we'll take the what is this storage space, and we'll convert it into a small theater, 150 seats. It was kind of a horseshoe. Those people who have been subscribers to the theater for a long time will remember the old horseshoe second stage. And we did some very, very challenging work in there. And some of the best theater that I did at SCR, particularly in my early years, was on that small stage because it was so compact and the audience was all around us on a horseshoe shape. And we were able to do in there some very small, intimate 2-character plays, Frankie and Johnny and the Clair de Lune, Playland. We did a lot of shows that people will remember as being moving, challenging, and some of them a little unnerving. We did Waiting for Godot in there. I remember there oftentimes were quite a few people missing after intermission when we started that show, but I enjoyed doing it. And that was a challenging aspect of being an actor at the theater, was being able to work on both stages. So you had to have a little bigger performance on the main stage, we called it then, and now it's called the Segerstrom stage, because that was a 500-seat theater. And it was a proscenium, or what we call a thrust. And so a little different style of stage work. And then, but when you came onto the second stage, it was almost a theater in the round. And we only had a back wall to the stage area. And things that were done on that stage scenically were amazing. The things that they were able to do, like on Playland, the Athol Fugart play, they made the behind the scenes of an amusement park in South Africa, and they made it look absolutely real and seem real. And so many plays that were done in there, plays with hot tubs on stage, and an old farmhouse in the a play that we did about the farm family what we have here in the United States is our Dust Bowl era during the Great Depression. And it was just palpable, the sound of the wind blowing outside and the sand that was spread all over the set and all over the table and all over the people when they came in. And it was just amazing to see people in the audience so transfixed. And a thing that I used to love about it was they would get so drawn into the stories, and you could feel them and see them, and they would be leaning forward on their knees with their elbows perched up on their knees, looking at the actors and looking at the action, so involved. And I always say that actors, you know, it's a great craft to be able to come on a stage, particularly in a big musical or something, and put people back in their seats, just really drive them back in their seats with this, just the simple power of the stage and the excitement of what's going on. But the thing that I love to do is to get them sitting forward in those quiet moments, just really wanting to be part of what is being shared on stage and the stories that are being told. And as a storyteller, I often characterize myself as a storyteller, and actors are generally storytellers. It's a great technique to be able to draw the audience in and then smash them back in their seats and then get them back to the storytelling. And that second stage was a space that was really capable of doing that. And I love the new theater that we have, which is the Argyros Theater, which is kind of a music box. It has 2 levels. It's 350 seats, but that has the same aspect of the big theater of being able to do larger things and put the audience back in their seat, but also it has that capability of pulling people in. And so the Argyros has replaced the old second stage, which is now called the Nicholas, in case people are wondering, and it's even smaller, 99 seats. But I particularly like the second stage. And coming back to your question about Jerry Patch's play, in the early days, I did a lot of shows on the second stage, and it ran concurrent with the main stage. So oftentimes, in the early days of that show, of Christmas Carol, I was in a show that conflicted with the running time of Christmas Carol. And so I missed some of those early ones. I think I've done 36 of the 40 And so that was fine. I love Jerry. He's a great friend of mine. I've known him for years and years. He and I were both in the service together during the Vietnam conflict. He luckily got to stay stateside. I, however, got thrust into the thick of it. And but when I came back, I met Jerry, and he had joined the theater. And he's largely responsible for me, running right back to the theater when I came back from the Army, because he was telling me, oh, they need you, things are really happening at SCR. So I contacted David and Martin. They said, absolutely, come back. And so there I was. And in all honesty, I sometimes credit the fact that I came back at all from Vietnam with that, having in my heart the feeling and the thought that I was coming back to SCR because I had to finish something that I felt I had started there with SCR back in 1964 when I joined the company. I think that it is unique, I have found, because it is the embodiment of a resident professional theater. And I mean that because we all grew up here. I mean, I literally grew up here. From my teenage years, I raised my families here. My son and his grandson, my daughter and her 3 grandchildren. My mother and father lived here. Actually, they lived in Lakewood, but they came here to see the theater. I have so many friends. All my doctors are here. All the restaurants that I enjoy are all here. And the people who live in this county and who inhabit the various educational institutions, UCI notwithstanding, all these people who are here who have supported the theater, they are part of the SCR community. And if you are a writer who is seeking to find a place to have your text, your work of theatrical literature seen and enjoyed and engaged with by a very smart, engaged audience, SCR is a great place to do it. And SCR has always been, from my very earliest memories, a play about, or rather a theater about the plays, about the text, about the writers. All of our new plays, all of the plays that we do, new or old, chestnuts, or plays that are classical plays, all of them, the focus has always been on the text. Just veering away from SCR for a second, speaking about text, I became, about a decade ago, actually several decades ago, I became a voice talent. And in the world of voices, you don't have scenic support, you don't have other actors around helping you, unless you're doing an animated series, which I've done. But a lot of the narrations that I have done, including I narrate for the Pageant of the Masters, I've been there for about 10 years. All of those narration venues, or all those narration jobs for documentary films and what have you, they all rely on the text, and it's all in the words. The story is in the words, and in the way the words are punctuated, and the way the sentences are put together. And working directly with the writer, you work to develop that story from just the words. And I became so aware as I became a voice talent, more so than I had ever been, how important text is. And when you come to the theater, you're going to hear stories, you're going to hear plays that maybe you might have seen somewhere else and not noticed before. That, oh, I see now what that's about. And at SCR, you will always see and hear the stories told very clearly and succinctly by very gifted professional artists. And that's the other thing that I love about SCR, is that even back in the day when we actually weren't paid, even though some of us were professionals, we still worked at SCR because we longed for that stage experience where the text and the story was primary, not the star that was saying the words or how celebrated the person was that was engaged in the play, or how famous the play was, but it was about the story within the play. And we were all trained to tell those stories. I became even more trained to tell stories as a voice talent. And when we came to this production of Christmas Carol, Hisa and I wanted very much to be sure we focused on those central issues within those individual stories within the larger tale of A Christmas Carol. And I think when you come to SCR, not only in Christmas Carol, but when you come to SCR as a patron or as a theater goer to see whatever we're doing, you're going to hear the story, and you're going to see that story told in all of its facets. And I love that about a professional theater. And by facets, I mean, you see the story told in the costumes, in the lighting, in the scenic development, in the soundscapes that people don't even realize sometimes, that the soundscape sometimes begins when you walk into the theater. You're not even aware it's going on, but it's being planted in there. All these little tidbits about the story you're about to see unfold. And that's a professional rep theater. And that's been in SCR's mind from the beginning, even though, in all honesty, from the beginning, we didn't have the funds or the wherewithal to do all the things that we now can do. But even in the beginning, we had it in our minds to focus on doing them. And I think that even at the beginning, that's what drew people to go to a little 80-seat theater in an old marine swap shop and buy a ticket just to see what this South Coast Repertory thing was about. You look at a wonderful community like Irvine, just closely around the theater, and the extended community of Costa Mesa, and then down into Newport Beach and Mission Viejo. Those communities do not grow if you don't have places for people to practice their faith, places for people to be educated, places where emergency services can be provided, whether they be hospitals or law enforcement or fire departments, and very importantly, right in there with all those, the arts. You must have the arts, because the arts give people a look at cultural developments and a look at where their community is growing and maybe where it's lacking that no other venue can give you. You can watch TV shows and sit back on your couch, but you can't, or go into a movie theater and sit with a few, maybe 100 or so other people and watch in a movie theater, kind of separated from it. But when you go into the theater to see a play or see a story told in the text of a play, you are in a group of people who are maybe like-minded, maybe not, people who live in your community, people who look like you, but maybe they look different, because now maybe some of the people in the plays they're seeing, they look different too. And suddenly you become aware that you're in a community, much as when you go to a baseball game, say. And I don't downgrade the importance of sports in the community. That's important too. But you go to a ball game and you're focused on the ball game. But if you happen to sit back and look around you, you realize, well, there's a great cross section of people here. And in the theater, it's the same. But the cross section is of people who are like-minded about cultural events. And you need those cultural events to go and share with people who have your like interests in the storytelling technique of live stage theater. And it enriches the very idea of living where you live. This SCR, and I've said this many times to people, but it's true. SCR is Orange County's own resident repertory, professional resident repertory theater, your own theater, just as if you had your own, university in your community, or your own school in your community, or a place where you go to practice your faith. SCR is your professional theater. And for some people, cultural things they liken to a faith, where they go and practice feelings they have about their culture. that they live in and what they would like to see it do, what it has done that has been done wrong, and how they might improve it. You can see those things in the theater, see them talk about them with theater goers, and leave the theater talking about them. And I think SCR, I like to think, is a place where you will find people leaving SCR theater after seeing a performance, and they'll be either quiet because they're thinking about what they just saw, or if they're leaving the theater talking, hopefully they are talking about what has just engendered interest in them in a subject they'd never thought about before. And I think that that is why you have a professional theater in your community. And you have one. It's called South Coast Repertory. And we wouldn't be anywhere else. We love it here. Hello, Richard Doyle, SCR founding member since the early days of SCR. And I just wanted to say to you, thank you if you have been a patron of SCR or a theater goer at SCR. And if you hadn't been back in a long while, please come back. We are open and we would like you to come and see us. Take care.